Welcome to Video Pods. Are you ready? Let's buckle up and dive in.
Hey everyone, welcome to our deep dive. Today all about destination management. You sent us some interesting stuff about tourism life cycles, carrying capacity. We even got some stuff about tourist personality types. It's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, some really fascinating stuff in there. You might even see travel a bit differently by the time we're done.
Okay, I'm sold. So where do we even start with something as big as like destination management?
Well, one way to get our heads around it, I think, is to think about how destinations change over time. They're not static, like they go through a whole life cycle, almost like a living organism, actually.
Oh, that's interesting. So we're not just talking like beaches and hotels here. We're talking like a whole system that grows and changes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where this idea of the tourist area life cycle comes in, or, TALC. Helps us understand the different stages, the pressures destinations face as they grow.
Okay, let's break this TALC thing down then. What are these stages and what do they actually look like?
Well, imagine you have this totally untouched paradise. Could be like a secluded island in the Pacific, or even a hidden valley in the Himalayas, something like that. That's the exploration stage. Only a few adventurous travelers even know it exists.
So yeah, the allure of the unknown. But that can't last forever, right?
No, it can't. Eventually, word gets out and you enter the involvement stage. That's where the locals start to see tourism as a possibility and maybe start some small businesses. Could be a family opens a guest house or starts offering guided tours, something like that.
So tourism starts to take root, but it's still pretty chill at this point.
Yeah, definitely. But then things can change quickly. Big companies might hear about the place and all of a sudden you're in the development stage. Investment pours in, infrastructure expands, tourism really becomes the main economic driver. Think about places like Cancun or Dubai, where tourism has really changed the whole landscape.
Okay, so things are booming, but is that always a good thing? I mean, I've been to places that felt a bit too developed, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's such a key point. The development stage has a lot of good things, for sure, but it can lead to problems. And then we go to the consolidation stage.
Okay, so what happens in this stage? Does the bubble burst?
Not necessarily, but things definitely start to shift. Tourism may be the biggest industry, but maybe some of that initial charm is gone. The types of tourists might change. The older hotels maybe aren't kept up as well. There's a sense that it's getting a bit stale.
Oh, yeah, the dreaded tourist trap phenomenon. Is there any way to come back from that?
That's the big question. This is where the destination is at a crossroads, the stagnation stage. Competition gets fierce, the environment might be showing some damage, maybe visitor numbers plateau or even decline.
So it's make or break time. What makes a destination thrive or fade away at this point?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. This is when a destination really has to decide on its future. It can fall into decline or can find ways to reinvent itself. And that's the final stage, decline or rejuvenation.
Can we get some real world examples of destinations at this crossroads? I get these stages in theory, but I'm curious what they're like in reality.
Oh, for sure. Think about Venice. It's an iconic city, definitely beautiful, but it's also struggling with all the effects of over-tourism. Millions of visitors crowd the streets and canals every year, putting pressure on everything. The infrastructure, the environment, even the social fabric. Some people say Venice is at a tipping point, it could decline if they don't figure out how to manage tourism better.
Whoa, okay, that's a pretty stark example. Are there any places that have successfully gone through this rejuvenation stage, they turned things around after that stagnation?
Absolutely. Take a look at some of those old industrial cities in Europe, like Liverpool in England, Bilbao in Spain. They've really changed things up and become cultural hubs, attracting tourists with museums, galleries, music festivals. It's tourism, but a different kind. More focused on heritage and creativity, not just beaches and all that.
So there's hope. But this idea of over-tourism you mentioned with Venice keeps coming up. I feel like we can't really talk about destination management without addressing that.
You're right. Over-tourism is a big challenge for a lot of destinations these days. And it's connected to this idea of carrying capacity.
Carrying capacity. That sounds a bit technical. Can you break it down for us?
Well, at its core, carrying capacity is about understanding the limits of destination. How many visitors can it handle before the bad stuff outweighs the good?
Oh, so it's not just physical space, how many people can actually squeeze into a place?
No, it's much bigger than that. It includes the environmental impact, the strain on resources, how it affects the local communities and their culture, even how viable tourism is economically in the long term.
Oh, wow. It sounds like a delicate balancing act, and one that a lot of destinations are really struggling with, honestly. All the material you sent was full of examples of places that are dealing with the bad side of overtourism, like Mount Everest Base Camp having to close down for a while because of all the trash left behind.
Yeah, that's a crazy example of how even the most remote, impressive places can't escape over-tourism. And then there's Iceland's Fjarðargjöfur Canyon. That one was in Game of Thrones and a Justin Bieber video, and all of a sudden it was just overrun with people. The ecosystem there couldn't handle it, so it was damaged pretty badly and they had to restrict access.
It's kind of sad when a place's popularity ends up hurting it. These examples really show how important careful planning and management are.
Oh, 100%. Understanding carrying capacity is super important for sustainable tourism. And it's more than just limiting how many people can visit. It's about managing them well, spreading them out, encouraging them to come during the off-season, educating them about responsible behavior, making sure tourism actually helps the local communities and doesn't just exploit them.
Okay, so it's a complex problem that needs a complex solution. What are some of the ways that destinations are dealing with overtourism and managing this carrying capacity?
One way is to offer a variety of things for tourists to do and to promote some of the lesser-known areas. Spread the impact out a bit. Instead of just focusing on the one popular beach, maybe promote hiking trails in the mountains nearby or cultural experiences in the villages.
I like that. It's about showing off those hidden gems and getting people off the beaten path. What about like managing the flow of visitors? Are there ways to make things more sustainable all year round?
Absolutely. Encouraging travel during the off-season is a big one. A lot of places get tons of visitors at certain times and then it's dead, which puts pressure on resources during peak season and leaves businesses struggling in the quieter times.
Makes sense. Plus, I bet traveling during the off-season is a totally different experience. You probably get a more authentic feel without all the crowds.
Oh yeah, for sure. You probably have more chances to interact with locals, enjoy a more relaxed pace, even get better deals on places to stay and flights. It's better for everyone, the destination, and the traveler.
Speaking of better for everyone, let's talk about what we can do as travelers. We've talked a lot about the destinations themselves, but what about us? Are there things we can do to be more responsible tourists?
Absolutely. We have a huge impact as travelers, and it can be good or bad depending on the choices we make. Being a responsible tourist is all about minimizing the bad and maximizing the good.
Okay, so what are some things we can actually do?
Well, first and foremost, be mindful of how you impact the environment. Choosing eco-friendly places to stay, minimizing waste, respecting wildlife, saving water and energy, those are all important.
So it's about thinking globally, but acting locally, even when you're on vacation.
Exactly. And then there's the social and cultural side. Be respectful of local customs and traditions, learn some basic phrases in the local language, support local businesses. That's how you really engage with a place in a more meaningful way.
It's about going beyond just like checking off sites and really immersing yourself in the place and the culture.
Exactly. It's about being a traveler, not just a tourist. Seeking out authentic experiences, connecting with local people, leaving a positive impact on the places you visit.
I bet those destination management organizations, the DMOs, play a big role in pushing for responsible tourism too, right? They're kind of like the ones in charge of tourism strategy.
Oh yeah, they do. They have a lot of responsibility to create and implement sustainable strategies, to market the destination responsibly, to make sure tourism benefits the locals. They're the bridge between the travelers, the businesses, and the place itself. They're the ones making the campaigns that encourage off-season travel, promoting the lesser-known spots, educating visitors about how to be responsible.
It sounds like they're the conductors of the whole tourism orchestra, making sure everything's working together nicely.
Right.
But speaking of different players, let's switch gears for a bit. You sent some material about tourist typologies, and I'm kind of fascinated by that.
Ah, yes, categorizing travelers. It's really a way of understanding the different kinds of people who travel, each with their own reasons, interests, behaviors.
So it's not just as simple as calling everyone a tourist. Tell me more about these types of travelers.
One common way to do it is to divide tourists into categories like the adventurer, who loves thrills and new things, the cultural explorer, who likes history and heritage, the sun seeker, who wants to relax on beaches, and the budget traveler, who wants to save money. There are a bunch more, and people can fit into more than one, of course.
It's like a personality test for travelers. I'm already trying to figure out which one I am. But before we go into all those types, you said something earlier about the difference between a tourist and an excursionist. What's that about? Is that just like a word? thing?
It is a subtle difference, but it is important. A tourist is someone who travels away from home for fun, for work, or whatever else, for more than a day, but less than a year. But an excursionist, they arrive at a destination and leave on the same day. Those quick little trips.
Oh, so those quick trips don't really make you a real tourist. Interesting. But whether we're tourists or excursionists, we all come with our own ideas and behaviors to the places we visit. Oh, absolutely. And that's why it's so important to understand these different tourist types. It helps the destinations tailor their offerings and their marketing to attract the right kind of visitors. And it helps us look at our own travel styles and think about how we're affecting the places we go.
I am definitely hooked on this idea, so tell me more about these different personalities. What are they looking for? How do they affect the destinations they go to?
Those are great questions, and ones we'll talk about in more detail in the next part of our deep dive. We'll really get into tourist typologies, why they travel, and how that affects the relationship between travelers and the places they go. Stay tuned.
All right, let's get back to these tourist typologies. I want to hear more about these different traveler personalities.
Yeah, you brought up a good point last time about how these different types of tourists actually affect the places they go.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about. Like, is it all about how much money they spend, or is there more to it? It's definitely more complicated than just the money. Take the adventurer, for example. This is the kind of traveler who's all about pushing limits, finding those really unique and challenging experiences. They might go for remote areas, extreme activities, off the beaten path kind of stuff.
So adventurous tourists could bring in some needed income to those less visited places, but they could also be hard on the environment.
Yeah, exactly. It's a trade-off. They're wanting something new and exciting can help local communities, but it could also backfire if it's not managed well.
Gotta find that balance, right? What about the cultural explorer? That's kind of me, I think. What's their impact like?
Oh, cultural explorers. They're all about history, heritage, the arts. They love museums, historical places, cultural performances, and talking to the locals.
So they could help preserve cultural heritage, but if too many come, it could lead to overcrowding or even damage those fragile artifacts.
You got it. It's about managing those crowds and making sure cultural tourism is done in a way that's sustainable and respectful.
Okay, what about the people who just want to chill on a beach? The sun seeker, right?
Yep. Sunseekers are all about relaxing, having fun, and escaping their busy lives. Beautiful beaches, resorts with everything you need, swimming, sunbathing, water sports. That's what they want.
Sounds amazing, but I can also see how that kind of tourism could really strain the coastal environment and resources.
Oh, for sure. Think about water usage, waste management, and the effects of building stuff on those coastal ecosystems. Places that cater to sunseekers really have to prioritize those sustainable practices if they want to protect what's bringing the visitors in the first place.
Makes sense. So we've got adventurers, cultural explorers, and sunseekers. What about those traveling on a budget?
The budget traveler is all about getting the best value for their money. They might stay in hostels, eat at local places, and look for free activities and attractions.
I feel like everyone's a bit of a budget traveler these days, especially with travel getting so expensive. Do they have a different impact than those other types of tourists?
Well, they might not spend as much at the fancy tourist businesses, but they can still make a big difference in the local economies, especially where there are a lot of small family-owned businesses.
So it's about spreading the economic benefits around to different parts of the community.
Exactly. And that's one of the big goals of responsible destination management.
It's wild to think about all these different tourists interacting with the destination. And even though we're putting them in these categories, there's probably a lot of overlap, right?
Oh, absolutely. People don't always fit perfectly in one category. Someone could be a cultural explorer during the day and then a foodie adventurer at night.
That's totally me. I love museums and history, but I also love trying new foods and finding those hidden little restaurants.
That's what makes travel fun, right? Discovering new things, expanding your horizons, finding the unexpected.
For sure. But now I'm thinking, how can destinations actually use this knowledge about tourist types to their advantage? Is it just about marketing, or is there more to it?
It's definitely more than just marketing, though that's a big part. Understanding those tourist types helps destinations develop experiences and services that fit what people want.
So it's like making the right product for the right customer.
Exactly. For example, a destination that wants more adventure tourists might build hiking trails, zip lines, rock climbing walls, that sort of thing. They might team up with tour operators who do extreme sports or eco-adventures. And their ads would focus on those exciting activities and beautiful landscapes.
And a city trying to attract those cultural explorers might focus on fixing up historical sites, giving guided tours, or having festivals and events that show off the local arts and culture.
Right. It's all about understanding what each kind of tourist is looking for and figuring out how to give them those experiences, but in a way that's sustainable and authentic.
So destinations can tailor what they offer. Can they also use this to manage the impacts of tourism better?
Definitely. When they understand what motivates different tourists and how they behave, they can kind of predict what might happen and come up with ways to deal with it.
Like for instance?
Okay, let's say a destination knows that a lot of nature lovers want to visit this one specific waterfall. They can use that knowledge to create trails that minimize erosion, build viewing platforms so the plants aren't trampled, and teach visitors about staying on the paths.
So it's about protecting what's bringing the tourists there in the first place.
Exactly. It's finding that balance between happy visitors and a protected environment.
And this whole idea of responsible tourism keeps popping up. It feels like it's a part of everything when it comes to managing destinations.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's not just a fad, it's a whole new way of thinking about travel. It's about recognizing that tourism can be good or bad for a place, and making choices that make the good stuff happen and minimize the bad.
And it's not just the destination's job, right? Travelers have to do their part too.
Absolutely. As travelers, we need to learn about the places we're going, make good choices, and act in a way that respects both the environment and the local communities.
So it's about being more than just a tourist. It's about being a responsible traveler, someone who cares about sustainability, and even an ambassador for the places we love.
That's a great way to put it. And I think more and more people are getting this. More travelers are looking for authentic experiences, supporting local businesses, and thinking about their impact.
That's good to hear. But with all this talk about tourist types and how they affect things, does that create stereotypes? Like, are we putting people in boxes and making assumptions about them?
That's a fair point. We have to remember that these types are just tools to help us understand why people travel and how they act. It's not about making strict categories or judging individuals.
So it's more like a starting point for understanding tourism, not like a rule book for how people behave.
Right. It's about remembering that every traveler is different and has their own story, motivations, and values.
And it's about making the tourism industry more inclusive and welcoming, where everyone feels good and people travel respectfully and responsibly.
Absolutely. And speaking of diversity, the world of travel is always changing. New kinds of tourists are popping up all the time, and destinations need to adapt to that.
Like, what are some of these new types? What's coming next?
Well, one thing we're seeing is the rise of what's called the transformational traveler. This is someone who wants more than just sightseeing and relaxing. They're looking to grow personally, explore spirituality, or connect more deeply with themselves and the world.
So it's like they want more than just a vacation. They want something that will actually change them.
Yeah, exactly. They might be into things like yoga retreats, meditation workshops, volunteer tourism, or cultural immersion programs.
That's interesting. It seems like more and more people want travel to be more meaningful, like it has a purpose.
There definitely is, and that's changing what destinations are offering. We're seeing more wellness tourism, spiritual tourism, and even regenerative tourism, which is all about making a positive impact on the environment and communities.
It's exciting to see how tourism is changing and adapting to these new needs and values. But with all these trends and types, it's a lot to take in. Where does the local community fit into all of this? We touched on it before, but I'd love to hear more about how they're shaping the future of tourism.
That's a great question, and it's one that we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive. We'll talk about how important it is to involve the community in managing destinations, look at the challenges and opportunities that come with that, and see how tourism can truly benefit both the visitors and the places they visit when everyone works together.
All right, we've talked about how destinations change over time, dealing with too much tourism and all those different kinds of travelers. Now let's talk about the people who live in these places and what they think.
You're right, we have to involve the community. It can't just be experts deciding how tourism should be managed. It's about listening to the people who actually call these places home.
Because they're the ones who see the effects of tourism every day.
Right.
The good and the bad.
Exactly. They see how it affects their lives, their environment, their culture, their economy. What they think is super important.
So how can we make sure those community voices are heard and actually considered when managing a destination?
Well, one big thing is creating ways for people to talk openly. This could be like town hall meetings, surveys, focus groups, even just casual conversations with residents. It's about keeping those lines of communication open and easy to use.
So it's about making people feel like they're part of the decision-making process, not just like they're being told what to do. But listening is only the first step, right? How do we take what they say and turn it into real actions and policies?
That's where working together is really important. Destinations need to create partnerships between the local communities, the tourism businesses, government agencies, everyone involved. It's about figuring out what works best for everyone, not just a few people.
It's a team effort, but I imagine those partnerships can be tough sometimes. Are there any places that are doing this really well, where the community is really at the heart of their tourism strategy?
Oh, there's some great examples. One that comes to mind is this little mountain town called Jackson Hole, Wyoming. They've been really proactive about involving the community in managing tourism. They have a planning process that's driven by the residents, they support local businesses, and they've got programs to teach both visitors and locals about being responsible tourists.
So they're actually putting their money where their mouth is.
Exactly. And it's working.
Yeah.
Jackson Hole has a booming tourism industry, but they've kept that strong community feel and protected their environment. It's something other places can definitely learn from.
Sounds like they found the balance between making money and doing things the right way. But let's be honest, community involvement isn't always easy. What are some of the challenges places face when they try to include everyone?
One thing that comes up a lot is dealing with different opinions and priorities. Not everyone in a community is going to agree on how to manage tourism. Some might focus on the economic benefits, while others might be more worried about the environment or keeping their traditions alive.
It's like solving a puzzle with a bunch of different solutions, each with their own pluses and minuses.
Yeah, and it takes good leadership and communication to work through those differences and find something everyone can agree on. It's also really important to make sure every part of the community has a voice, not just the loudest or most powerful ones.
So making sure everyone feels like what they think matters. But even with the best intentions, things can get unbalanced, right? Like between the local community and big tourism companies.
You're right, that's a real issue. It's important to understand those power dynamics and find ways to give communities more control and a real say in making decisions.
So it's more than just inviting them to the table. It's about giving them a real voice in what happens.
Exactly. That might mean giving resources and support to community organizations, having clear rules for community participation, or even giving them a financial stake in how tourism is developed.
It's about making sure tourism helps local communities, not just takes from them. And on that note, what are some of the good things that happen when you involve the community the right way?
Well, one big benefit is that it can lead to more sustainable and responsible tourism. When communities are part of deciding how tourism grows, they're more likely to push for policies that protect their environment and their way of life.
That makes sense. They're the ones who have to live there, so they want to make sure tourism is done right.
Right. But it's not just about sustainability. Community involvement can actually make the tourist experience better and more authentic too.
How so?
When tourists can talk to locals and learn about their culture and traditions, it creates a travel experience that's much richer and more meaningful. It helps break down stereotypes and helps people understand each other's cultures better.
It's about going beyond the surface level and creating real connections between the visitors and the places they visit.
Exactly. And those connections can benefit everyone.
So community involvement isn't just about dealing with the impacts of tourism. It's about creating a better experience for everyone.
Exactly. And I think more and more places are starting to realize that. Community involvement is no longer just a nice idea. It's something every destination needs if they want sustainable and successful tourism.
It feels like we've come full circle. We started talking about how destinations change, the problems of too many tourists, and all those different personalities. And now we see how it all ties together with this idea of community involvement.
It really is all connected. Managing a destination sustainably isn't just about protecting the environment or limiting visitors. It's about creating a way of doing tourism that benefits everyone. The tourists, the businesses, and most importantly, the communities.
It's about understanding that tourism can really shape places, in good ways and bad. And it's about using that power responsibly, working together, and having respect for the places and people that make travel so great.
I couldn't have said it better myself. The main thing to remember from all of this is that we all have a part to play in how tourism develops. Whether we're travelers, people who manage destinations, or community members, we all have a responsibility to make choices that contribute to a more sustainable, fair, and enriching travel experience for everyone.
So before we wrap up today, I want to leave you with a question to think about. Think back on your own travels. Have you ever felt a real connection with a local community? What made that experience so special? And how can you, as a traveler, help create those connections in the future?
Those are some great questions. And I hope this deep dive has gotten you thinking about your own choices when you travel and the impact you have on the places you visit.
We've talked about a lot today, from how destinations evolve to why community involvement is so important. But in the end, it's all about making travel better for everyone. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of